Today we are going to discuss 10 notable people throughout history who struggled with drug addiction. The first is Benjamin Franklin. The famed statesman, diplomat, printer, scientist, and inventor used opium to combat severe pain resulting from a growing bladder stone that kept him bedridden throughout many of his final days. According to one historian, Franklin was almost certainly addicted to opium in his declining years. James Madison visited Franklin during this time and wrote of him, "The only alleviation, he said, to his pain was opium, and that he found it as yet to be a pretty sure one. I told him I took it for granted he used it as sparingly as possible, as frequent doses must otherwise impair his constitutional strength. He was well aware, he said, that every dose he took had that effect, but he had no other remedy, and thought the best terms he could make with his complaint was to give up a part of his remaining life for the greater ease of the rest." Secondly, we have Mary Todd Lincoln, the wife of Abraham Lincoln and First Lady of the United States. She was a user of the over-the-counter drug containing alcohol and opium, which were frequently given to women of her era. She suffered from numerous physical and mental health issues during her life, including frequent migraines, depression, and possibly bipolar disorder. She was briefly institutionalized for psychiatric disease in 1875. After the assassination of her husband, she struggled to survive and became a laughingstock to the public due to her erratic behavior and hysterical crying, which they viewed as improper for a woman of her standing. Author Anne E. Beidler writes of Mary Todd, "I think we need to understand her better, for although more than 100 years have passed between us, she was very much like many of us today. She was an addict. After many years in the field of chemical addiction, I am drawn to Mary. Any woman in our addiction therapy groups would immediately feel a kinship with her. She acts like an addict, she sounds like an addict, and comes from a family rampant with addiction." Third, we have William Wilberforce. The British Member of Parliament and evangelical Christian reformer, known for leading the legislative fight to end the British slave trade, struggled with opioid use for nearly 50 years. It began when he was 29 to treat his ulcerative colitis per the recommendation of his doctor. In his biography of Wilberforce, author Eric Metaxas argues, "Wilberforce did not appear to become addicted to it. He quite admirably managed to keep his dosage from increasing over the decades. Unfortunately, this is not true. Over the decades, Wilberforce's daily dosage rose from 5 grains a day to 12 grains or more. Wilberforce tried to quit several times, but unfortunately failed, writing in his diary that he was forced to lie in bed, great sneezing, and other signs of spasm." Fourth, we have Sigmund Freud. The Austrian neurologist and founder of psychoanalysis was a fan of cocaine. Dr. Howard Markle, medical historian and author of An Anatomy of Addiction, stated during an interview with the PBS NewsHour that Freud loved the way cocaine made him feel, and he was very interested in its psychological components. For one, it did make him feel better when he was sad. He was also amazed at how it made him feel and how it made him talk endlessly about things he thought were locked away in his brain. Sound familiar? That's talk therapy, but without the toxic effects of cocaine. But he got to like it a little bit too much. Fifth, we have Frederick Chopin. The Polish composer and virtuoso pianist of the Romantic period was known as an opiate user who composed a substantial number of his works while under its influence. Chopin used the drug habitually to manage the agonizing symptoms of late-stage tuberculosis. He was also known to have suffered from hallucinations. According to an unconfirmed report by the French music critic Bernard Gavatti, Chopin walked around from the piano in the middle of a performance because he saw strange creatures emerging from the instruments. However, most historians believe his hallucinations were the result of temporal lobe epilepsy. Next we have number 6, Charles Dickens, the English writer and social critic known as the greatest novelist of the Victorian era, was addicted to laudanum. Dickens suffered from a range of illnesses throughout his life, including rheumatism, obsessive-compulsive disorder, depression, gout, and asthma, to name a few. He also suffered from trigeminal neuralgia, which caused him severe facial pains, which he treated with laudanum. Dickens went on a performance tour in America in 1868, where he was described as only being able to sleep after taking laudanum, and he could only read after drinking sherry or champagne, according to author Christopher Hibbert. Number 7, we have Elizabeth Barrett Browning. The English poet of the Victorian era was also a laudanum user. According to historical novelist Stephanie Cowell, Elizabeth Barrett began to take laudanum, a tincture of opium, for what is thought to have been a spinal injury at the age of 15. It is believed she continued to take it through 2 more serious illnesses in her 30s. It was almost impossible for her to stop once she had begun it, and it worked against her. It is said her dosage was 4 times the average dosage of opium today. 8th, we have Augusta Ada King, also known as Ada Lovelace. She was a mathematician and is considered by some to be the world's first computer programmer for her work on Charles Babbage's proposed mechanical general-purpose computer, which included publishing the first algorithm for such a machine. Ada Lovelace was frequently unwell. She was prescribed laudanum and wine by her doctor to manage her frequent sickness. She expressed concern that too much mathematics was making her ill. Her tutor, Augustus D. Morgan, apparently agreed with her, stating that such work was beyond the strength of a woman's physical power of application. Next we have number 9, Thomas Jefferson. The American founding father and 3rd president of the United States was another laudanum user, which he used to ease his chronic diarrhea, even growing his own poppies on his Monticello estate. Laudanum allowed him to resume his activities, so Jefferson accepted its daily use. Jefferson continued the medication until one day before his death, when, according to his grandson, he advised his doctor that he wished no more of it, stating, "No, doctor, nothing more." And lastly, number 10, we have Friedrich Nietzsche. The controversial German philosopher was a known user of opium, potassium bromide, a sedative, and coral hydrate, a sedative and hypnotic. Nietzsche was not a healthy man by any means. At the age of 13, he experienced severe headaches, thought to have been caused by his poor eyesight, which plagued him for the rest of his life. He also suffered from insomnia and intestinal pains. While training with the Prussian military, Nietzsche was thrown from his horse, causing a chest injury. To counter the pain, Nietzsche eventually turned to drugs. He even wrote his own prescriptions for all kinds of drugs and signed them as Dr. Nietzsche. They were prepared and filled without question or hesitation. Although he used these drugs, he had a disdain for alcohol, writing, "Perhaps Asians are distinguished above Europeans by a capacity for longer, deeper calm. Even their opiates have a slow effect and require patience, as opposed to the disgusting suddenness of the European poison, alcohol." And that's the end of the video. If you know of any other historical addicts, please mention them below. Here are our sources cited. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.